it's a really valuable point. I'm curious as to, you talked a little bit about raw food earlier. How did you find your way into raw food? And like, how did you develop your passion for it the way that you have? Because I guess the side note here is for everyone listening, Yoko makes the most amazing raw food. Like it is, if you hear raw food and you think that just sounds cold and miserable, if you're in Melbourne, you're lucky. Check out Shokuiku. We'll link it at the end of the podcast because your food is amazing at showing people, hey, raw food can be incredible. It can be flavorsome. It doesn't have to be cold necessarily, and you can really recreate anything. And I think it's a great, I guess, way that you've kind of shown your fascination, I guess, in raw food. And I'm just curious as to how you kind of got on that journey.
Yeah, so as I said, I kind of tried it just as a curiosity. So when I tried it, that was maybe like 15 years ago, and not many people in Melbourne or Australia kind of knew what raw food was. But I think it was kind of started to take off in US. So I was just kind of curious to why everyone was talking about it overseas. So I kind of tried it, and then my energy was just so different. My skin was different. And I just felt happier. Like, yeah. So that's kind of how I got into the basics of raw food. And I'm a quite creative person. And I think these days that's how I express my creativity. And a lot of people say raw food, oh my God, it's like, it's a limit. It's like a vegan is like hard enough, but there's so much limitation, but I don't see it that way. Like I see it as like the opportunity to be more creative. And I just love that aspect of, okay, I might not use this, but what can I use? And just the challenge of like creating something really beautiful with limited ingredients and limited cooking techniques was just so exciting to me. Like you go to a cafe and you order a vegan food and it's like toast with avocado. It's like, how like not inspirational is that? So I think that was the challenge that I really enjoyed. And I feel like that's my preferred way of eating, not just for my health, but just the taste and just the taste of the real food just comes through so much more. So that's kind of how I got into raw food. Yeah.
And so is it like, I think it's really important when we talk about food to not get dogmatic. And I've certainly been guilty of that in the past where I started eating a certain way and I'm like, this is it. I have to eat, and that's somewhat detrimental over time. And so how do you kind of balance understanding that when we eat raw, we're getting live enzymes and the benefits are there, we feel better, taste better, but how do you kind of balance that with also living in 2021, living in...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is my preferred like way of eating, and I do that when I cook for myself, and I just do that. But then when I go out or when my friends cook me dinner, I don't like, say, okay, so is this raw or is this organic? Because food is more than what you're consuming, right? You're consuming with friends you love and just the energy that you're creating with your, with your community. And so for me, that's more important than anything else. There are some food that I just don't touch. I don't like deep fried food and things like that. And I don't really do animal food. That's just where I set my boundaries. But other than that, I put more weight on the company and because I get more benefit, I think, from just being easy and just enjoying the company more than just worrying about what I eat, Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I came across Don Tolman and he talked about how quickly we can heal the body. And he said fasting is quite quick then maybe juice fasting a bit less quick. And then I remember he always talked about eating raw foods for 90 days. And at the time I was like, how do you do that? Like, what? Like you must just eat like nuts and I don't know, piece of fruit every now and then. Sounded really hard. However, it's interesting to me now that even on this podcast alone, it seems to be coming up a lot in my field, because I think the further we get into our health and the more we want to expand our quality of life and our health, raw foods are a part of that, because it's living food, and we're not ruining the food by cooking it all the time, or certainly not deep frying it and creating these toxic compounds on the foods at high temperatures and whatnot, So it's interesting to me that it keeps coming up. I'm actually conscious in my mind. I'm like, do I keep wanting to just talking about raw foods on the podcast all the time? People might get bored. But if we're serious about taking our health to the next level, it's kind of important, to at least try and do it for a period of time.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be 100% for sure. And I mean, I do say, okay, so I do raw food, but I consider my food as a living food, not so much. So that's why I still eat, like I still do like miso, like I still do, like natto. I still, do cooked food, but that's fermented, or like sprouted, like all my nuts are activated, like, you know what I mean? So there's a difference between just raw food and living food. But yeah, definitely. I think I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. Actually, living food is the key thing there. It's alive and it's giving us the most energy, the most life force that